In this week's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Ben Galyardt, and Dr. Ben is founder and CEO of the F8 Well Centres and the Galyardt Method, and he is a leading expert and speaker when it comes to functional medicine, neurofeedback and brain regeneration, and he is here to teach us all about how we can improve our own health with use of functional medicine. On this week's episode of The Happy Psychic, I am joined by Dr. Ben Galyard, and he is founder and CEO of F8 Well Centres. And the Galyardt Method is a leading sort of method that has been developed by Dr. Ben, and he is a leading expert and speaker when it comes to functional medicine, neurofeedback and brain regeneration. So Ben, it is very good to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love just getting the word out there that the body truly has that potential to heal, and we were designed beautifully and perfectly. And if you give it enough of the good stuff, take out enough of the bad stuff, we get to see miracles all the time.
Yeah, I actually do agree with that. You know, some of the stories that I have read over the years, and probably in this last few years as I've been on my own journey, have been absolutely incredible. So I'm eager to pick your brains a little bit more to understand about this functional medicine. Now, I understand that you have been on a bit of a journey with this yourself due to your mum's illness and something that she experienced.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and this goes back a long ways, way back to when I was in high school, and my mom collapsed. I'm in the U.S., and so our football is with an actual football and not soccer. So I was playing a football game, and my mom collapsed during the game, and I was playing. And I didn't see it, and people came up afterwards and were like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what happened?" I go, "No, I was playing. I didn't see what happened." And so they had to almost carry her out to the car. She went down this path over the next couple months of getting MRIs and seeing neurologists and all these different testing to figure out what is really going on. And so they said, you know what? I think it's MS. MS is a degenerative disease. We didn't know what it was at the time. And you're going to attack your nerves, and then it'll go into remission, and then you'll attack again and go into remission. And eventually you won't be able to walk, and eventually you'll die from it. And we're like, wow, that's not the way I wanted to go. I just saw my mom in the U.S. We had Mother's Day yesterday, and so I got to see my mom and tell her how thankful I was for all the amazing things she's done for me. And we used to go for runs together and all kinds of activities. And to see her in this state, it was pretty traumatic. And so she went on all the drugs at the time for MS. She ended up getting a cane, ended up having to get a wheelchair. When she'd go to the grocery store, they have these carts here where you can drive around for people that are disabled or aren't able to function. She had to go on disability, which means she wasn't able to work anymore, and the government was paying her salary, etc. And finally, my dad, he retired, and they moved down to this small town in the middle of nowhere, and this doctor was there that was doing functional medicine even before it was called functional medicine. And he started working through system by system by system, which is what I'm going to be talking about in our conversations today, is this systems-based approach, where you don't treat MS by trying to squash the immune system. That's not what you do. You work on the other systems that are driving that autoimmune reaction. And so that's what they did, to the point where she got off all the drugs. She gave away her wheelchair. She gave away her cane. And she just turned 80 years old a couple months ago, and she does Granny Boot Camp. She takes my kids fishing. And a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my dad. They were getting ready to come back to Colorado for the summer, and I said, "Oh, what'd you guys do today?" And he said, "Oh, your mom was up on the roof blowing leaves out of the gutters with the with the blower." I go, "Is that safe?" And he said, "Well, I asked her the same thing, but she said she's more agile than most 80-year-olds." And so, the body can heal, and that is what has driven me down this path. And we've seen MS, we've seen rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease, and all these different conditions. The body is pretty darn amazing.
Yeah. And do you deal with a lot of, issues that impact the physical body, or do you also deal with things like depression and anxiety and things like that?
Absolutely. So
I suppose in a way
almost,
they do have an effect, don't they? But
yeah.
I
So
was just saying there that in a way, anxiety and things like that, they do have an impact on the physical body to a certain extent as well. And I will shut up now and let you talk.
yeah, no, you're good. Almost every patient with autoimmune, and I'm talking autoimmune a lot, but because it's so prevalent, but almost every condition, but especially
Yeah.
autoimmune, almost every single patient that we see has this anxiety state, has this brain pattern where it just is in this chronic fight or flight, and it's keeping their immune system revved up, and it's attacking its own tissue. So absolutely, that is a major part of it. I'll go live, and I just did that this morning. I was on TikTok live, and somebody asked, "Can PTSD trigger autoimmune?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do you think?" Anybody watching had a major stressful event, and then their autoimmune flared up, and there was so many people said yes, 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 me, yes, yes, yes. So many people, those stressful events can drive this immune inflammatory cascade. So that's where part of our Galyardt method is to help people on the neurologic side, on the brain side, and to get them out of that fight or flight, get them into a good sleep pattern, help with their depression, help with their ADD or their inability to focus, or all of these different things that people are experiencing day in and day out. Is that just my brain is not working like it's supposed to? And that, like you said, I mean, it really is just as important as stabilizing the blood sugar, as working on somebody's adrenals and all these different things. That's why I've written two books. One is Rebuild Your Brain. The other is Your Blood Sugar Doesn't Lie. So the brain is crucial in that whole process.
Yeah. It's funny because you talk about obviously getting to the root cause of the issue rather than treating like the symptoms. And, you said about your mum and having her um, immune system all like repressed to deal with the MS. But I think in so many regards, and I keep coming to this conclusion, Western medicine is an amazing thing. And I think there's so many amazing things that come out of Western medicine when we talk about the traditional, pharmaceutical products and, surgery and, all of the diagnostics we have. But at the same time, from my own experience as well as listening to other people and speaking to other people, we're so focused sometimes on providing treatments and writing prescriptions and giving medication that we're not really looking at what is causing the issue in the first place. The
Yeah.
focus is on making it easier and dealing with the symptoms rather than actually addressing the root
Yep.
cause of why things have happened. So it sounds like functional medicine really is just about almost, I'm not saying that it's about sidestepping Western medicine in the traditional sense that we often think of, but definitely really trying to get a better understanding of unraveling the issue
Yeah.
rather than sticking a plaster over the top of it or a band-aid over it.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way of describing it. I look at it this way and describe it this way, is that in that Western medicine, traditional medicine, whatever you want to look at, is that it's a this for that model. So you've got this symptom, you're going to take that thing. And that's usually a medication. A lot of people, though, come into even the natural medicine world and do the same thing. And they say, oh, I can't sleep, so here's your melatonin. Oh, I've got digestion issues. Here's your enzyme, or here's a probiotic. And so that philosophy is still there for a lot of people. And that's not even functional medicine. Just using natural herbs or supplements or things like that is still not functional medicine. Functional medicine is where we get to the underlying root causes. We fix what we find. So I don't even care. I mean, I do care, but on some level, I don't care what the diagnosis is, because the diagnosis, okay, great. That just means that now you can put it in the U.S. here. We've got all of our ICD-10 codes, and you can label it and then get insurance to pay for it and then get on disability and all these different things. Great. But I don't even care what that diagnosis is. I care which systems are out of balance. Which systems are driving 190 named autoimmune diseases third leading cause of death when you lump them all together. How is that even a thing? Well, it's huge. It's absolutely huge that we're seeing this state of body attacking its own tissue, body going haywire. And there's no amount of immunosuppression that's going to fix that. We've got to get into the stabilize the systems that are driving that immune system to go haywire.
It's almost as though the condition itself that we're experiencing is a symptom of something else.
Exactly.
So on my own personal journey, I had breast cancer, and I'm quite young to have had breast cancer.
Yeah.
And one of the things with the surgeon and the doctors in the Western medicine world, as amazing as they were able to resolve that for me.
Yeah.
However, the whole idea and the concept of my body was overproducing its estrogen, and my body was then using that extra estrogen to build these cancer cells. Like that's, I know it's probably way more complicated than that, but that is the short version that they give me. So they had given me a tablet that would do something to my body's production of estrogen, or how it was misusing it. But to me, I just couldn't get my head around the idea of taking a tablet for the next 10 years, because to me, I'm thinking, well, my body's doing something that it shouldn't be. Shouldn't we just investigate and get to the root cause of that and figure that out first, and then we can solve the issue? So my logical brain was thinking, well, we'll just understand why it's doing that. But that isn't really how we're taught to think in the Western world. It is very much about like, okay, well, like you said, we'll have a tablet for that, and we'll give you a tablet, and then it'll prevent that happening again, or it'll, but then we often end up in a situation where we then have a knock-on effect of, we have another symptom, or that medication provides us with another ailment that then we might need to get treated, 5 years down the line. So there's quite a lot of knock-on effects and knock-on impacts that I guess we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the thought of there's a condition called Hashimoto's, and Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. It's the actually most common autoimmune disease in the United States. And Hashimoto's is never treated in Western medicine. It's the autoimmune disease. What they'll treat people with is levothyroxine, or a thyroid hormone, for their low thyroid state, but they never address the autoimmune. And so even sometimes not doing that root cause work is actually then going to cause other issues. And the vast majority of people that we see with Hashimoto's or with any type of autoimmune, they actually have multiple autoimmune conditions. And so the people that have Hashimoto's that never address the root cause, they now have lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or MS or other autoimmune diseases, because their doctor was like, I'm fine not helping your autoimmune disease. I'm just going to give you thyroid hormone.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is it that drives people towards considering functional medicine? Obviously your mum experienced something where she really went from such an active lifestyle to, well, this just isn't working for me. I don't want to live like this. But when people do come to you, because I understand you have the Colorado branch, but you also have a number of other satellite branches as well across the country where you're really bringing this out to people. Yeah. When people come to you, why do they usually come to you? What has driven them to get to that stage of considering functional medicine and something that is really different to what we're taught to pursue, and it's often outside of the societal norm?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we do have brick and mortar offices in the U.S., but we also work remotely. Patients in the U.S., Canada, even around the world, we're able to help people that way. And it's the same story, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the States. It's the same story that we hear over and over, is that I went to my doctor, I told them I don't feel well, they ran blood work, and they said, everything looks pretty good. Eat better, lose weight. Maybe it's in your head. Did all these tests. I got sent to a specialist and they can't figure it out, or they tried different drugs and they actually made me worse. Or, they just tell me that you need an antidepressant. That's where your health issues are coming from, is from your mental issues. And sure, that depression can affect things, but most people get depressed because they're in pain, because they're tired, because they feel horrible, not the other way around. And so most of our people that find us on TikTok or Instagram or come into one of our offices, they're doing this from a place of almost rejection from that traditional medical model and from that Western medicine of, it's like, you know what, you don't really fit in this box of, do you have high cholesterol or high blood pressure or diabetes, or, we have drugs for that. But if it's not like a labeled drug that we can boom, give you this, or even if we do that and it doesn't work, then we'll pass you off to a specialist, or we'll pass you off to a psychologist, somebody that can look at it from a mental state, because if you don't fit in our box, you must have a mental disorder. And instead, I need to come in and this is my mission, is to bring functional medicine to the forefront of healthcare, so that people start here. People start with the basics and they go, I feel like crap. I feel tired. I feel like brain fog and I'm not sleeping and I feel digestion's not where it needs to be. I don't feel right. Not what drug do I need? What surgery do I need? But what is that telling us? If you think about this, if you bring your dog to the vet and your dog's got some skin issue, your vet's going to ask questions like, did you change its dog food lately? What are you putting on it? What are you feeding it? Your vet's going to ask you questions like that. But our doctors are not trained to ask questions like that. They're trained to diagnose, which a lot are really good at diagnosing, but they're not trained to fix these underlying imbalances. And that is where functional medicine, it has to come into the forefront of healthcare. Otherwise, you look at even the United States, where we spend by far the most money, I don't even like calling it healthcare, on our sick care. We spend the most money of any country out there, and yet have the worst outcomes. We have some of the worst outcomes with pregnancies and birthing. We have some of the worst outcomes with life expectancy. We have some of the worst outcomes in so many different health categories, and yet we spend the most amount of money. And it's a philosophy change that is needed. Not even so much a change in what medication you do or what specialist you go to, but a philosophy change that is needed.
Yeah. And it's such a big change as well. And I certainly noticed that within the UK. And I think that it will take baby steps from that. It's a bizarre, to me, it's a bizarre system. And I'm not doing your job. I'm not a functional medical specialist or expert. And it still seems bizarre to me that we have this. So I'm really eager to understand a little bit more about how you actually work to treat people, and what does that look like with somebody coming to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we see somebody in office, that's a different experience than when we see somebody remotely. But it's the same thought process of, hey, foundational work that we have to do is get a comprehensive blood panel. So we're going to run as much as we possibly can as far as blood work goes. We're going to look at hormones. We're going to look at adrenals and liver, and we're looking for gut issues and leaky gut. We're looking at blood sugar and inflammatory markers and autoimmune markers and full thyroid and all of these different tests, running this comprehensive panel. So that's one thing. We get it out wide, but then we narrow it down. And so the problem with looking at it from the reference range, at the different labs that we use throughout the country have different ranges for TSH, different ranges for ferritin, different ranges for hemoglobin. And the lab range is this wide bell curve. But we go down into this healthy range, and so what we have to do is we have to figure out exactly where that where we fall into the healthy range, not the average sick person. So we throw the net out wide, look at lots of different things, and then narrow it down into what healthy people need to be at as far as their blood work goes. Then we can start, if we want to diagnose which systems are out of balance. Your adrenals, your liver, your brain, your gut, you've got a microbiome issue, you've got a viral infection, chronic viral infection, whatever it is, that's what we need to be diagnosing. Not this, I go to this specialist and get this magic diagnosis of, functional neurologic disorder. And you're like, well, what is that even? Well, my nerves don't work sometimes. I had a patient like this a couple weeks ago. My nerves don't work sometimes and I can't walk. Well, it's like, well, what is that? What is actually going on? And that's where we have to look at. And she was very hypoglycemic. And so we have to dig deep into there and go, okay, oh my gosh, we've got to dig and figure out which one of these systems are out of balance. And a lot of times it's multiple systems, like 4 or 6 or 8 or 10. And then we just move our feet and we'll go through system by system by system and help that body start to calm down, start attacking its own tissue, stop creating inflammation, all those different things. And that's how we get to see the miracles all the time.
And what does that look like for you? Like, what does treatment look like? I appreciate it will be very different for everybody, but
Absolutely.
how do you treat this sort of thing?
Yeah. So ultimately, we do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. And I wrote a book, Blood Sugar Doesn't Lie, and that is a foundational piece of what we do with our patients every day is stabilize their blood sugar. And we use a continuous glucose monitor. This is a patch that goes on the back of the arm, and you're able to see 24/7 what that blood sugar is doing. Any spikes, any crashes, and that is huge. I always say we could reverse or prevent upwards of 90% of chronic health conditions if everybody stabilized their blood sugar 85 to 110 all day, every day. I mean, it is that phenomenal of a difference. So we've got to get that blood sugar to stabilize. We've got to get it into that good range, and that's a foundational piece for us. If there's gut issues, we know if there's bad stuff, we're going to kill off bad stuff with oregano or garlic or different herbs, and then we're going to bring in good stuff, which would be probiotics. We're going to work on healing up the gut lining. We're going to work on, if your liver's not detoxifying like it's supposed to, we're going to help the liver do that. You mentioned your breast cancer and estrogen. So it's not just making too much estrogen or bringing in too much estrogen. It's actually your body's ability to eliminate those estrogens. And that can be just as important for a lot of women as blocking their estrogen, is to make sure that you're eliminating like you need to. And that's the problem with a lot of these conditions where, they take out your thyroid because you have Graves' disease, or they remove your breast because you have breast cancer and then give you this estrogen blocker, but they don't fix the why. And that's the problem. And that's why so many people, type 1 diabetes, you got people that their autoimmune is attacking their pancreas and they're not able to secrete insulin anymore. And so their doctor gives them an insulin pump, but they don't stop the autoimmune. And then they get additional autoimmune diseases because they never fixed why the body's in that immune inflammatory cascade.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very close to home, this. Because I have lived it, and those were the questions that I was asking, and Western medicine weren't able to give that to me. They weren't able to give those answers to me, because for me, I'm like, okay, well, if I take this medication, you take my breast, you give me this tablet, and I take it for 10 years. But that's still, so what happens? I was like, so I take it, I stop taking it in 10 years down the line. And then the issue just happens again because we haven't actually addressed what is going on underneath the surface. And as you rightly said as well, it's not even just that, it's the knock-on effect for the rest of us. And you mentioned about my liver. I have thought for a long time, that there must be something to do with my liver. And you just talked about really the knock-on effect that probably many of us experience with our different ailments and illnesses, that it's all interlinked and it all needs to be fully operational and working and as a unit in order for us to really get the benefit from it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where we go system by system by system. It's not a here's your magic bullet, here's your one pill, here's your, people are like, oh, it's parasites. You got to kill off your parasites. I'm like, maybe, but you probably have 7 other things. Or somebody's got an autoimmune disease or Hashimoto's or something, and they're taking low dose naltrexone, LDN, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a miracle. I'm feeling so much better with this. And even though it's more of a natural thing that they're taking, it's still just calming down that immune inflammatory cascade, and which is the end stage. They're not getting this foundational piece over here of all the things that are driving that immune inflammatory cascade. So we've got to keep saying why deeper, why deeper, why deeper. And we just got to keep going down and getting to those true root causes. It's not like we've got these thistles in Colorado and they're the bane of my existence in my yard. And I'll pull a thistle out, and the root's like this long, but it's one big root. Very seldomly is it a root cause for our health. It's roots. It looks like an oak tree, and it's got all these roots, and they're intermingled and intertwined, and it's this deeper, comprehensive approach that you have to fix everything across the board and not just go, ooh, it's parasites, or oh, it was from mold, or whatever it was in one root. No, it's intermingled all over the place.
And what does treatment look like in terms of the time frame as well that people would be looking at until they are feeling better or seeing results, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So, most of our patients, if somebody has autoimmune, it's going to be about six months, maybe even really intense, maybe up to 9 months. People, if they don't have a lot going on, just want to optimize their health, do some things, that can be 3 or 4 months. And this is really just because we know what it takes to go system by system. We don't just throw 20 pills at somebody and say, go and do all this. It's this systems-based approach. But it doesn't take 6 months to feel better. I tell every single person that I start care with is that you are going to be feeling significant difference even in the first 30 days. And this is, we see it over and over and over that people are able to experience. They'll drop X number of pounds, kilograms, whatever they're gonna drop. They're going to be sleeping better. Their inflammation's going to be down. Their pain's going to be less. I had a lady. She works for Amazon down in Arizona, and a couple months ago we started care. She was probably 130 pounds overweight. And I'm using pounds, not kilograms, so just divide it by 2 about. And so she lost 30 pounds in that first month, and she went from walking with a cane to walking 7 miles a day without the use of the cane. And that's in the first 30 days.
That's amazing.
And you're like, well, how did that happen? I go, the body's amazing. Give it more of the good stuff, take out the bad stuff. I always say I'm not smart enough to get past the basics. And we've got to fix the basics. You can go down a bunch of rabbit holes and look at, genetics and look at all these things, but you've got to fix the basics.
Yeah. And for that sort of change to happen, like have they had to make big changes themselves in their lives, or is this all of your wizardry?
Yeah. So I don't heal. I don't fix. We enable the body to make these changes. And so one of the foundational pieces that we do is we give people a glucose monitor, and they're able to start seeing why that blood sugar spikes up, why it crashes down, and start matching up which foods are going to match up with making it go higher or making it go lower. And so then you do less of the stuff that makes it up and down and more of the things that make it steady. And the inflammation starts going down dramatically. Even within 7 to 10 days, we'll see changes that way. Taking out certain foods, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, all these things that in the United States we're just inundated with, and unfortunately that's one of our best export products in the United States is bad food. McDonald's and all this processed food and everything is that okay? Hey, we're going to put our standard American diet on the rest of the world. And that drives this inflammatory process in the body. And just by taking out some of those foods, you'll see this difference. So then we'll start doing a couple supplements, even in those first 30 days, and things to help if someone's not having a bowel movement, but once a week, we'll get them going. If somebody's having 20 bowel movements a day, we'll slow them down. If somebody's not able to make the energy like they need to, there's things that we can do to give them a little boost right at first. A bunch of different things that's like, hey, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. But it comes down to diet. It comes down to detoxification pathways. It comes down to the blood sugar stabilization. It comes down to infections in your body. And that's what we have to do, is just system by system to help that change. And that's how you get to see those miracles is, we're not doing the healing. We're not doing the curing. We're not doing the fixing. We're saying, hey, these systems are out of balance. Now let's move our feet. And now your body is going to be able to make those dramatic changes itself.
Yeah. So I guess it definitely requires somebody that is willing to make the changes as well if
Yes.
they want to see the results and understand that there isn't a quick fix. They will need to put the work in themselves in order to see the change. And sometimes I guess that has to come from us feeling discomfort. We have to feel significant discomfort within ourselves and our situation in order to move towards that change and to be motivated to actually work on it. So it's one thing coming to you, but it's another thing them actually embracing the system and what you're offering in order to make the changes outside of that. I think it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. My mind is blown. I feel like I'm so excited that this exists in the world, and that there's a name for it, and there's somebody that's heading it up, and I just think that it's exciting to hopefully see this taking shape more and more. And maybe I don't want to say take people away from Western medicine. I think sometimes I sound like I hate Western medicine, and that's not the case. I think that it has an awful lot to offer, but I also think that it does an awful lot of harm as well. I think just with the attitudes and the way that we're, as a system, as a whole philosophy, it's not about getting to that root cause, and we're not teaching ourselves to almost observe what the body can do and to pay attention to ourselves. We think, oh, I have an ailment, I'll go and I'll get a medication for it. There's people that go and see the doctor constantly, whereas I've never been one for that. But at the same time, until I had cancer, I don't think that I'd really taken seriously what I was putting into my body. And now that I'm sort of on my spiritual pathway, which wasn't always the case for me. You do have a tendency to look more and more and more towards more holistic methods, and to realize that actually the body fully functions. It should function by itself if we're feeding it good food from the earth, not processed stuff, not stuff with added chemicals, not McDonald's, then it should operate. And if it's not operating, that's a signal for us to explore in a bit more detail to try and figure out what the issue is.
Yep. I love to think about it this way. I've got 4 boys, and they love hunting. And have you ever seen an American elk? Big, it's like a big deer, giant.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything. We've shot multiple elk, and it's pretty emotional. It's a big, beautiful animal, and we go out there and we're field dressing it, and I can't help but think at that time of, this animal was designed perfectly to go and run around the mountains and eat grass and do the things that it's supposed to do, and it doesn't get migraines and have to go like lie down for the rest of the day. It's not getting PMS and going, oh, I've got cramps, you guys go ahead, I'll catch up, I've got cramps today. Or getting Crohn's disease and having 30 bowel movements a day and getting dehydrated and having to go get IVs out in the wild and all that. That doesn't happen. They're out there running around, doing what they need to do, eating what they need to eat, and their bodies work like it's supposed to. But think about this. What happens, at least in the States, when people have dogs? Our dogs over here, they're getting thyroid disease. They're getting cancers. They're getting hip replacements. They're getting all of these different conditions that humans get. Why? Because they're living in our same houses, being exposed to the same chemicals, the glyphosate Roundup on the grass. They're getting the processed foods. They're eating table scraps. They're all of these things, and dogs are getting the same diseases as humans. And you're like, well, there's some big disconnect here between what that wild animal is living like it's supposed to and what we are domesticated as.
Yeah, it's amazing actually that you bring up the dog. And I was smiling to myself whenever you mentioned about, you bring the dog to the vet and it has a skin condition. The vet wants to know if there's a change in its food and everything. I've just recently experienced that. So my Rosie that is barking incessantly in the background, we only got her about 2 months ago, maybe 12 weeks now. And whenever she first came to us, she had a bit of a bald patch, or she had developed a bit of a bald patch at the base of her tail. And I took her to the vet just because I wanted her to get checked over. And the vet did ask about this bald patch. Now, it only started when she came here. I put it down to stress, but that was exactly what she started asking me about, was what are you feeding her and this, that, and the other. But I was too embarrassed. To tell the vet that I wasn't feeding her dog food out of a tin or out of a packet, because I was feeding her real food and I was cooking and preparing and doing meal prep for my dog, because I didn't want to get told off by the vet, because we are in this system that teaches us, well, the dog food companies know best. They have put this together. It's in the dog's best interest. But to me, that is a processed food. If we were going and living off McDonald's or off like some sort of processed freezer ready meal, then, we're going to end up ill and with cancer and everything else. So if our bodies are supposed to eat fresh, then surely the dog should be eating fresh food that is sufficient for it as well, rather than a tin food. It's like, what world are we in that we think that actually, no, I should give my dog tinned food. It's the best option for it to give it, this food that has been made by Purina I'm not specifically picking on them, but
sure.
It's just, it baffles me. It really does baffle me a little bit. And I don't know what your views are on that, but, I definitely have realized that actually, just because we're taught that it is good for us, or taught that it is good for the dog, or that it is a societal expectation or society norm, that doesn't mean that it's the right choice or the best thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, it goes all the way back for humans, all the way back to the formula, and that so many women are told, oh, formula is just as good as breast milk. And there's some women that just truly aren't able to produce, or there's certain situations, or maybe with twins they can't. But for the vast majority of women, breastfeeding is way healthier than the formula. And we look, oh, but they figure out. And if you read formula ingredients, I mean, it looks like, this, all this processed stuff, and you're looking at sugars and all types of things. And it's like, holy cow, how does that even turn into a person? And then they get into, okay, now they're eating over here. We've got these little goldfish, these like little crackers that are in the shape of a goldfish. And then kids eat those, and then they're eating macaroni and cheese, and they're eating chicken nuggets, and they're eating, and you're like, how does that even turn into a person? let alone a healthy person. But just can that actually drive us into an adult and being healthy? And so it's really, what you were saying earlier was really important in that it's not complicated, but you do need some type of motivation. You do need that little spark. Like, I had breast cancer and I don't ever want to go down this path again. I was on that medication and I had this bad reaction to it. I'm not the mom I want to be because I'm falling asleep at 7 o'clock every night and can't even spend time with my kids. There has to be something that we then move our feet and say, okay, now I am ready to actually do something different. I'm ready to dig deep. I'm ready to truly make these changes. And that's what we look for in our patients. If somebody's just like, my spouse wants me to be here, they're not going to get better. They're not going to, if you've ever tried to change your spouse, that doesn't work. There's no amount of nagging and pushing that's going to fix that. If you want to quit smoking, that's one thing. If your spouse wants you to quit smoking, that's not going to work. And same thing with your health. You have to want that, and you've got to want to put the time and energy in. It's not rocket science. It's not this crazy idea. And yet it's basic things, but you have to put the work in.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I find this conversation fascinating, and I could probably go on and ask lots and lots and lots of questions, but as well, I want people to be able to come to you and check out your own content and be able to establish that communication with you as well for any additional questions that they have.
Yeah.
So, where is the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so on YouTube, we've got over 800 videos, and these are almost every health condition you can imagine. Some are 10 minutes, some are up to 60 minutes long, full webinars, and just tons of information on there. So it's either Dr. Ben Galyardt or F8 Well Centers for any of these links. On TikTok, we're over 285,000 followers. We've got over 50,000 followers on Instagram at Dr. Ben F8 on that one. We've got over 110,000 followers on Facebook. So we've got content out all over. I go live all the time and just try to get out as much information as possible. And then our website, f8wellcenters.com, tons of information on there. Talks about the brain map, talks about the brain side of health conditions, how to get a hold of us, any of that information. And so my goal is to give you as much information as possible that you can heal your body. And if you need more help and if you need support, reach out to us. And so with as much information, literally thousands of videos out there, you should be able to take massive action and get your body in a really good place. But a lot of people, they need support, they need hand holding, they need somebody shoulder to shoulder with them. And that's where we come into play, and we can take you by the hand and help you through that process.
Yeah. It's definitely nice to know that you are with an expert, somebody that has, proven experience and has seen this happen with lots of different people before,
Yeah.
and has lots of experience where where you might not. Well, honestly, Ben, it has been brilliant having you on the show. I really appreciate you coming on here, and I'm probably going to be having a bit of a look myself, because I actually think that I have a lot to benefit. I think I had underestimated what I actually had to benefit from something like this. So even from this individual conversation that we have had, I'm confident that I will be pursuing something like this, and I know that there will be a lot of other listeners as well that will be really, really struck with what you've had to say today.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I just really encourage anybody listening out there to take massive action. Do something. You've got to move your feet and educate yourselves and think about which systems are out of balance. Don't just take a supplement and go, ooh, now I'm doing some natural things. That doesn't fix it. That's a good place to start, but that's not fixing anything. You've got to dig deep and start figuring out which systems are out of balance. And it can work, and people can feel better, and you can see amazing, amazing changes day in and day out. So yeah, I just look forward to each and every one of you starting or continuing down this healing journey and figuring out where it's out of balance and just living life to the fullest. I always say I want people to be able to do more, be more, and give more. And you've got that potential inside of you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're able to, please rate the show or leave feedback on your chosen podcast player. You can also visit the podcast website. Simply head across to thehappypsychic.show, and you can also find me on the socials by searching for @Gemma Lonsdale Guru.